it can be an important article, and the first time I read it through, I might pick up one point in it or two, but usually it takes 3 or 4 times. So I think repetition is, for me, this is the way I learn, and I think a lot of people learn that way. You know, if you were ever in the service back in the 60s, they told us in the Navy that you know, we're going to tell you what we're going to teach you, then we're going to teach you what we tell you, and then we're going to tell you what we taught you. So repetition is good. So welcome again. Now we're going to go ahead and save questions and answers to 2 portions. We're going to do the CoLS first. It'll take about 20 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're going to do the arrow shoulder. And then between those 2 presentations, we will answer any questions you have. Then following the end of the webinar should take 45 to 60 minutes. Everybody certainly is free to go at the end of the 45 minutes or 60 minutes. If you do want to stay on and have additional questions or something that we need to know about, just stay on the phone and we'll continue the webinar for as long as people are asking questions and as long as it is proving useful. So let's begin. The CoLS is the best ACL reconstruction system available anywhere. I am convinced of that. It is one concept. It is a tape with a blunt threaded screw in it. Everything I'm going to tell you about the CoLS today and also about the arrow has already been taught to you in training. I don't believe there's any new information here. This is a review to get you focused on what are the truly important parts. So the CoLS has one concept, one fixation, screws and tape. It has reproducible results, and why is that an advantage? It's an advantage because you don't have to, you don't have to bring 2 different systems in for one ACL. Now the other systems might have one fixation system for the femur and another fixation system for the tibia. The ACL that we have, the Coles system, is just one system, one concept that can be done both in the femur and in the tibia. That is an important concept for surgeons who want to save time, save implant coverage, and reduce the cost of sterilizing several different trays. One tray for this whole ACL. These are the items that you have to know cold. If you know these items, you know the basics of the system. If you don't know all of these items here, these 6 different items, you have to remember these. These are the items that would be the scrub sink presentation. First of all, this is a tissue-sparing procedure. The Coles, the ACL system is tissue-sparing. Only one semi-T is harvested. Only one hamstring is harvested, and that is usually the semi-T. Why is that good for the doctor? That's a benefit because if something happens while harvesting the semi-T, or if it's too short, you can always go back and harvest the gracilis also. So that is a built-in safety net for the surgeon. The sockets are short. They preserve tissue. And because they're so short, the damage to the bone is much less. And the sockets are retro-reamed, so that is also a way to avoid stress fractures and mini fractures, and it causes less pain. So less pain to the patient is the benefit there. It is a 360-degree watertight press fit. It's tendon to bone all the way around 360 degrees. That is important because some of the other systems might use an interference screw where they crush the sock or crush the graft into the bone or crush bone into bone. But if you put a screw in there, you have a non-tissue contact with the bone that's in the area where you want healing in a fairly large area. So watertight 360-degree press fit is a very important concept. Our fixation screw does not deform the graft. Very important. If you deform the graft, you interfere with the 360-degree tendon to bone healing. We do not deform the graft. We snuggle up to the graft. Now, The quadruple hamstring graft is the strongest ACL fixation that is available that we're aware of. Now, I take this information not from our company, but from a chapter in the Prodromus book that was written about 7 years ago, where he talks about quadruple hamstring is the strongest graft for ACL that they were aware of. This is a very critical component, number 6 on this list. Pre-tensioning removes concerns about laxity. Everybody pre-tensions to some degree on hamstring, but nobody, with the exception of FH, nobody pre-tensions enough. You must have at least 165 newtons of pre-tension pressure in order to take the laxity out of the system. Some of these systems do 50 or 60. That is not enough. You have to do the adequate pre-tensioning to remove the laxity. Remember that also that length equals laxity, so a short graft is better. We have a short graft. And the laxity is stressed between 300 and 500 newtons on our pre-tensioning table. Very critical concept there. Now, these are hot topics, and some of this is repeated on those first 6 items, but these are things that are good to know too. Now, we said the graft is pre-tensioned. It is a predictable pre-tensioning at 300 to 500 newtons. How do we know that? Because that's the pressure of the spring on the bottom of the table. Laxity is less of an issue on this graft due to the graft stiffness. Now, graft stiffness is more important in terms of laxity, or the removing the laxity, than is the overall strength of the graft, or the pull out to failure portion of the measurements. If you have a 1500 Newton pressure that pull out to failure, that is important, because if you're walking, you're going to do around in the 500 Newton area. But if you have stiffness, now let's tell you what stiffness is. Stiffness, if you remember, is the lengthening or the lack of lengthening when you apply a given force. So if I put a 100 Newton pressure and try to stretch a graft, if it stretches less than 1/10 of a millimeter, that is considered the stiffness of the graft. The stiffness is important because as you repeat the movement of the leg while you're walking, that cyclical loading that you're putting on is what is causing a lack of stiffness or laxity. So stiffness is very important. Our graft that we tested, when we tested it, and then when we compared it to the other items that are in the literature, our graft is the strongest available on the market right now. Additionally, the coalesce system does outside-in aiming. Outside-in aiming is very anatomical. Transtibial aiming is not anatomical because the graft does not sit in the knee on a direct line from the tibia to the femur. So transtibial cannot be anatomic. Outside-in aiming is more anatomic. And as we said, we're tissue sparing on the harvest of just one hamstring, and also the bone tunnels are much shorter than they are with other manufacturers. We have published data to support our efficacy. You have to use those that published data. Those articles are the one by Henri Robert and by Xavier Cassard. One of them is on children, and the other one is on 2-year follow-up for the coalesce system. And then finally, again, the 360 watertight press fit is important, and the screw does not deform the graft. Now, this is a watertight press fit system. When you put this system in and you place it and you get the femoral part of the graft in the femur and the tibial part in the tibia, and then you run this through a range of motion with flexion and extension, the graft does not really move after you've put it in. It is press fit, and you want it to be tightly press fit. Then we go ahead and ensure the placement of that graft by putting these screws attached to the tape. So we are doing a belt and suspenders approach. One of the things that we want to be able to confirm with you all and make sure that everybody is doing is that we need to be selling this product. We don't want to be selling the screws and the tapes as much as we are selling the benefits to the doctor. We've talked about a lot of things here, and in each one of those things there is a benefit to the doctor. So we want to sell the product. Don't just concentrate on selling a training course. We've kind of made a bit of a mistake, I would say, in focusing on that. And yes, it is important. We always want to make sure our doctors and our sales reps are adequately trained. But let's not pass up a sale for a training, okay? So what do we sell when we sell this? Well, we sell the benefits to the patient and the doctor. And right now, patient comfort and easier rehabilitation are a definite plus with the CoLS system. Now, another benefit for the doctor to sell is that at any point in the surgery, you can go back to a previous step. Not all systems have that capability. There are some systems in which you are committed to that system once you make a certain step, once you complete a certain step. With our system, you can always go back to the previous step, so it is reversible. And finally, in terms of getting after the sales information, I would definitely go after, if you find a doctor who is an Arthrex user, I would definitely go after them very aggressively. Arthrex has taken some of our ideas and used them on their system, but they failed to make a good conversion with several points. Number one, they are not pre-tensioned enough. Number two, their graft is too long. Number three, there has more laxity in that system than there is in ours by a very measurable amount. So we pre-tension 300 to 500 newtons. That's you've got to stress that pre-tensioning, because that is going to elongate the graft on average between 2 and 4 millimeters every time you put it under tension. This is outside in aiming. Inside out targeting cannot be anatomical because you're going to be too vertical if you try to go through the tibia. Outside in is the best way. If you want to make a socket in the femur, the best way to do that is through the femur, not through the tibia. Go lateral on the femur to the medial side. And as you look at we did a meta-analysis. We looked at meta-analysis of all of the different systems that are out there. And as you can see on this, and you've seen this before, but just a reminder, we are the strongest system in terms of overall pull-out strength. Now, this is for our construct, not just for the graft. The graft would be even stronger than this, but this is the whole construct. So what do you need when you make the sales call? Well, obviously you need the sales brochure, which shows some of the strength and shows the screw, shows the tape. And if you have a sample, obviously that is very important. You must have the Henri Robert and Xavier Cassard articles with you at all times. If you don't have those, they're on the memory stick that you will receive that training. So copy those off and give those out. If anybody has questions, we've got efficacy studies. Make sure you know the video, obviously, that's a given. And you want to know what the surgeon uses and why he uses it. Because if we run into a situation where a surgeon uses something, and I think the example was, well, my wife is the sales rep for Arthrex. Okay, don't worry about that guy. Or we're going to walk away from some of these people. But knowledge of what they're using and why will give you an answer of what you can concentrate on. If they're talking about the endo button or the washer lock, we are a much shorter graft. Laxity is equal to length. A much shorter graft is desired. Some of these only double up or triple up the bundle. We quadruple it. That's very important. The CoLS system was designed to achieve the following things. We wanted the patient to be able to immediately bear weight on that graft. Now, we've got pictures, we've got videos of patients walking without limp, without crutches, without braces, 24 hours post-surgery. Those can be powerful things. Some of the other people may be able to do that, but you can't do that with bone-tended bone. We were designed to have immediate, unrestricted range of motion and to be able to do same-day surgical visits. Now, in France, they might keep the patients in the OR or in the hospital overnight. In the U.S., these are at surgery centers. Those patients are out 4 or 5 hours after the surgery, sometimes less. We wanted post-op care to be without braces or crutches. We wanted it to be less painful, and it is. And we wanted a return to normal daily life, so the walking and the driving, and a return to work as soon as possible. And with this system, especially if it's a sedentary return job type, these people can return to work within a couple of days of the surgery. Now, what questions or what have you all run into when you are out making sales calls that we need to address? So I guess we're opening this up, Janet, to questions. Who would like to ask some questions?
We are. I have unmuted everyone. Please mute your computers unless you're trying to speak.
No questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, who is this?
This is Phil here in Michigan.
Yeah, Phil.
The system just kind of makes sense, and luckily, you know, I was able to bring one of our surgeons out to Chicago and watch Mark Bowen do this, and he's just probably the best salesperson for this system that we could have came across. The only issue that I would have, or I guess that I want to see about tackling, is how do you take this system and go after the people that are bone, tendon, bone users and convert them to soft tissue? What is the process in it?
Okay, I think number one, I think that's a great question. Number one, you can't convert all of the bone, tendon, bone people to soft tissue. You can convert many of them. Remember that Mark Bowen was a bone, tendon, bone user before we saw him and converted him to the system. But it took us 6 months. That's a big job. It is much easier to convert soft tissue users already. Bone, tendon, bone is the gold standard of ACL reconstruction. It has less laxity than any type of hamstring, with the exception of the CoLS system because of our pre-tensioning. So we are performing almost like bone, tendon, bone. The answer that I would give a doctor is, well, I use bone, tendon, bone, and that's what I use. If you look at Mark Bowen's information that he has shared with us, his information says that the CoLS system behaves like a bone, tendon, bone surgery does. The stiffness, the feel of it. He says this is the closest to bone, tendon, bone. So what I would say, Phil, is, Doc, we give you the closest thing to bone, tendon, bone that is available, plus the benefits of hamstring: less pain, easier rehabilitation, less morbidity. And so if patient comfort is very important to you, this is the system you want to use. That's what I
have a surgeon who is a big sports medicine surgeon, but she uses bone, tendon, bone. So so I also just toss out there that we have quicker return to function and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. You can take, I would take into, I presume you're talking about Julie Dodd, I would take into her a couple of the post-surgical videos that we have with these patients walking the day after surgery, 24 hours after surgery, with no narcotics, no braces, and no crutches, and show her that. Now, if somebody says, but I'm not going to use this on my elite athletes, okay, I'm fine with that. Don't use it on your elite athletes. But I'm telling you right now, you're going to have a lot of 35, 30-year-olds, 40-year-old weekend athletes who are not elite athletes who would benefit more greatly from a hamstring procedure than they would bone, tendon, bone.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hey, Greg.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, guys, this is Brian. I just wanted to, something else that you could point out, and Greg or one of us from FH can get you the slide, is, you know, you may want to ask them why they're using bone, tendon, bone as opposed to soft tissue. Normally, it's because they like the fixation, and something that we like to do is to, you know, show them and bring up to their attention and say, hey, what if I can offer you a better graft than what you have right now, with fixation that's also equal to or better what you're getting with bone, tendon, bone? Because I think a lot of these doctors that are BTB users like it because of the strong fixation, but we have some documents to prove that we actually, you know, soft tissue is actually a better graft, but the problem has always been fixation, and now our system addresses that and provides excellent fixation, and you can show them the graft that it's actually stronger than the BTB constructs that are out there.
I think that's a good point, Brian. And back to Phil's question about the doctor who is a devotee of the bone, tendon, bone. Number one, this behaves like bone, tendon, bone. Number 2, it is easier on the patient. So if that's important, you go with that. And number 3, our graft is stronger than a bone, tendon, bone. Our quadrupled hamstring is stronger than a bone, tendon, bone graft, okay, in ultimate pull-out failure. Now, it's not always the same on the stiffness end, but it is on the ultimate load to failure. Any other questions?
And just something else you guys can do is you can Google, just look up Dr. Michael Maynard, or I believe it's also just on YouTube. You could look up Dr. Michael Maynard, Maynard. And I don't know who did this, but Dr. Maynard was interviewed by somebody, and he addresses that exact issue. The fact that he was BTB before and why he changed, talking about the post-operative anterior knee pain, and the fact that he was looking for something, but just nobody had anything that addressed the fixation, and he thought FH did, and that's what made him a believer. It's a quick little 4-minute video you can find on YouTube.
And we will be providing you with some other insights that Mark Bowen has shared with us on a recent video we made of him. It'll probably be available in about 30 days. So just keep working on it. Again, in answer to Phil's question, you can get some bone, tendon, bone, people. Soft tissue guys are easier. So, all right, we're going to move on now. If you'll all mute your phones or unmute your computers, I'm going to move on to the next, the arrow overview here. And yes, go ahead.
I'm going to do a kind of a corporate mute here, so then tell me when you want me to unmute everyone. Okay.
Okay. Well, I like to talk, so just keep them all muted for the next couple of days. So, all right, let's move on. All right. Topics, the things you have to be aware of. First of all, you can see by the picture that this is a flexible system. It is a hemi, it is a total primary, it is a reverse shoulder system. So it is flexible, yet it is very simple. And the simplicity is primarily in the numbers of pieces we use and with the stem, It is reproducible. It's very reproducible with the cutting guide and the humeral stem. It is cost effective. We only have 4 trays. If you are going to use some of the other manufacturers, if you're a surgeon, and you don't know whether you're going to want to do a reverse or a fracture or a primary, with us, you have 4 trays that'll take care of that. And let's say a tray costs about $100 to sterilize. That's going to be about $400 to the hospital. Some of the other systems would have to bring in 2 different systems for a reverse and for a primary. You might have 6 to 8 trays, so $600 to $800 might be the cost associated with those trays. Now, if you look at a couple of our components, we don't have different collars on the stem, so we reduced inventory there. Our metaphysis with the polyethylene insert is factory installed, so that takes out one of the pieces, and it's gives it a little bit easier ability to track inventory and store inventory. Now, so we said this before, I'll say it again, this is a universal platform. It is used for both primaries and reverses as well as fractures. You can make a perioperative decision if you are the surgeon and if you're not sure what you're going to use. Now, most of the time, the surgeon, especially the surgeon who's pretty good, who's a shoulder-trained fellow, a fellowship-trained shoulder surgeon, he knows whether he's going to use a reverse or a primary. But on occasion, they might get inside once they open the patient up and find something there that they were not expecting because they may not see everything on the MRI. With this system, they just make the decision to switch with everything that's available right there. Rick Caro had a couple of instances in the last 2 months where a surgeon was going to do a primary, said, oh my gosh, the rotator cuff is, I'm just going to have to go back in here in another year or 2 if I don't do this now. What do I need to switch? And Rick's answer was, you don't need to do anything. It's all right here. Use it now. And that doctor was very impressed with our system. The system, excuse me, the system is easily revised because of the humeral stem primarily. All right. Now, you can do a cement or a press fit depending on the bone quality of the humeral stem. Not everybody has that capability. You might have to make a decision whether you're going to use a press fit system or a cemented system. But if the bone quality is lousy, if you were dealing with a rheumatoid arthritic, you might want to routinely cement. Most doctors in the U.S. don't like to cement. We understand that. We have both centered and off-center heads for primary arthroplasty so that you can cover that bone osteotomy that you did with enough variable head sizes to cover just about everything. Remember that we have a collar on our stem. Sell the collar. Why do you sell the collar? Because the collar helps prevent subsidence. You get subsidence if that thing starts to drift down or you lose the firing mechanism of the deltoid if it's a reverse, okay? So subsidence is not a good thing. We help prevent subsidence by the collar that's on our stem. Now this is a very simple system, and we have great follow-up data. Sell the literature. We can give you, and we have given you, reports or clinical studies that are very good that show that this has been proven with the test of time and peer-reviewed research. We'll get into that a little bit more in a couple minutes. The reverse shoulder, you have to know this. It is 12 millimeters lateralized, okay? Why is that important? Well, it's important because it reduces glenoid notching significantly, and it improves the external and internal rotation. Now, if it improves external and internal rotation, it also improves the range of motion. And if it improves the range of motion, it improves the strength and function of the shoulder for that patient, so the patient is much better off. The next thing to remember is that this base plate, this anterior-posterior screw, this is a game changer. We are unique in this. When you sell the Aero system, you have to have a base plate and a screw with you to show this. This is the game changer part of the system, all right? The stabilization and the strength of that base plate is very solid, and it's very solid because of the keel. Now, the AP screw will even add more to it, but just by the keel alone, and we're going to address the keel in just a minute also. And as we said, only 4 trays are needed for surgery. This is better for the doctor to use because our stem does not have a regular Morris taper on it. It's an inverted Morris taper, and it makes it a little bit easier to get access to the glenoid. That is a benefit for the doctor. Doctor, do you ever have trouble with the glenoid? Would a reverse Morris taper help you? We have a reverse Morris taper so that you get an easier line into the glenoid. The convex back on the glenoids, especially the metal back glenoid, provides outstanding stability. Now, many of your competitors have a flat back, metal back base plate. Convex is much, much better. Our metaphysis is factory installed. Remember that. You don't have to use you don't have to put a poly piece onto a metal piece while it's in the shoulder and hope that you have the Morris taper engaged. Now, if you've got a little bit of blood or fluid in there, that Morris taper is not going to engage. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but it could be in another for another manufacturer. We did have, on occasion, polyethylene disassociation from the metal metaphysis. So we've taken that out of the picture by providing a factory-installed metaphysis. Additionally, our poly component on the metaphysis is about 1.9 millimeters deeper than most of the others, certainly more than the Grammont type of designs. Why is that important? It's important because what they found when they first introduced the reverses to this country and in France is that they had a fairly significant number of anterior dislocations. We've taken care of that prophylactically by adding 1.9 millimeters of depth to our polyethylene. Now, when you're selling the reverse, you must sell the metal back base plate. Now, most, I guess all of the other ones have either a screw or a post in the center, and that's what the doctors have been trained on. I'm not saying this is going to be just a quick slam dunk. You'll look at this and you get them. They'll question it. But remember this, the metal back base plate that we have has a keel on it. This keel is less subject to torsional pressure or stresses. So it is less resistant to torsional stress and shearing forces that other one has. The second thing, and equally important, this metal back base plate keel provides more surface area of contact with the metal on the base plate and the hydroxyapatite coating and the bone. More surface area means better chance of bone on bone or bone on implant healing, okay? Again, cell metaphysis is being factory constructed and deep dished so that it is better for anterior dislocations. You sell the flexibility of the whole system, of course, and the fact that it is cost effective. We are trying to bring down costs and helping the surgeons with costs. Inventory handling is easier, inventory tracking is easier, and just these, again, getting back to the 4 trays. The base plate keel, again, the metal back base plate keel. Remember also that I've had several doctors tell me, well, geez, that you're taking out a lot of bone. No, doctor, I'm sorry, that's a good point, but we are not taking out any bone. We don't remove any bone at all, but we in fact compact the bone to build a very strong bony mantle to press fit this system in. This was first designed as a press fit metal back glenoid. Now they found after the first year, back in 2002 or 2003, that they indeed wanted to have screws on it just to reinforce the fixation. But this was made, originally designed as a press fit metal back base plate. The screws were added a year later. They had 2 or 3, dentist cats had 2 or 3 of the base plates come loose and some very poor bone.
What you just did just taught me something. So as long as you're on.
What's that, Janet?
Oh, hold on. Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. Dennis Katz was getting to the point. He put in a couple of these, and in a couple of patients with some compromised bone, he realized that a screw would be even better for this press fit base plate. But this was originally designed as a straight press fit. The compression screws were added a year after they introduced it. You present the base plate with a different plane of fixation when you do the AP screw. So you have a crosswise fixation. That strengthens the overall stability. You will not find a stronger base plate on the market. The 5.5 cancella screws are optimally pitched. What do I mean by that? It means they bite into the bone better than anything that's available out there. So you can make for a very aggressive compression of this base plate to the bone. We are not using locking screws. Some of the companies use locking screws. Locking screws are not bad. They're fine. However, we're not interested in locking the screw to the base plate. We want to lock the base plate to the glenoid bone. That's where the very strong difference in our system is. And those compression screws make that possible. When you make a sales call, obviously you want the sales brochure. You have to have it. You want to use articles comparing the Arrow to the Delta 3, and that is by Ibrahim Kalachi, the article that's on your stick that shows 47 Delta 3, that's the Grammont design, and 49 Arrow reverses. And in 32 of the 47 patients who had the Delta, 32 of those patients at 2 years had significant glenoid notching. 0 out of 49 patients with the Arrow had glenoid notching. That is a powerful message to leave with the surgeon. Now, the surgeon might say something like, well, but glenoid notching hasn't been proven to be clinically relevant. I'm sorry, it has been proven to be clinically relevant after 8 years, and they're finding this out in Europe right now. We don't have the experience in the U.S. of being able to say that glenoid notching is clinically significant or not. We don't have enough experience here, so tell them about the European experience. They're seeing a lot of revision surgeries necessary when they have significant glenoid notching. You're going to need to have the base plate at a very minimum whenever you make a sales call. The other things would be also very valuable, of course, and if you need those, you have to take, we want to help you with that, and so you discuss that with your regional manager. Now, My question to you all is, can you make an effective sales call today with what you have? You've had training. We're doing a little bit of overview here. If you can, great. Let's go out. Let's do it. If you can't, and it's not an indictment if you can't, because if you're like me, it takes a long time to learn all of this stuff. I want you to call your regional manager and get yourself able to make a sales call today. Don't forget that questions open the door to any presentation that you're going to make. And the first question, what are you using and why? Again, my wife's the sales rep. Okay, thanks, Doc. I'll see you later. I like using a system that provides me with flexibility. That's a very important point. Flexibility is critical. Let me show you how flexible we are and why. Okay, doctor, have you ever had a fracture of the glenoid, or have you ever had to do grafting of a glenoid? Because let me show you this AP screw on this base plate that we have, which will make that a little bit easier. If you fracture the glenoid, you don't have to worry as much as you do with some other systems, because we can put an anterior to posterior screw through that. Doctor, we've made getting at the glenoid a little bit easier. Is that important for you? Many shoulder surgeons don't have as much trouble as they used to 10, 15 years ago getting at the glenoid, because exposure is easier today because people know more about it and what to do. But there's still, the guy who does 6 to 10 surgeries a year, glenoid exposure could be a problem. We make glenoid exposure easier because of the reverse Morris taper. If you're asking them about the coalesce, you have to ask them, where does patient comfort and patient rehabilitation enter into the decision-making process? If they say it doesn't enter into the decision-making process, that kind of deflates that question. However, the patients who have used the coalesce system are much easier rehabilitated. Scott Galogli did a study with 8 of his physical therapists. Scott is, after he was using this system for 6 months, 8 of his physical therapists, he owns a big physical therapy department at his clinic there, 7 out of 8 of his physical therapists said if they were going to have an ACL, they would have the coalesce rather than bone, tendon, bone after 6 months when he was using this, because the rehabilitation was so much better for the patients. Now, when if the doctor says that patient comfort is important, I would say, well, doc, for the patient who's not an elite athlete, because you're feeling uncomfortable about leaving the bone, tendon, bone, this behaves like bone, tendon, bone. Okay, that's a really important answer. This is as close to bone, tendon, bone feel as some of our big consulting surgeons have been able to see. And the one question, I think, Doc, if I can show you a way to reduce the pre-implantation laxity, is that a concern, or are you interested in that? Because hamstring has always suffered from the issue of laxity. The coalesce system takes laxity out of the equation. We behave more like a bone, tendon, bone. The last question, or one of the certainly an important question, is, doctor, what's it going to take to get you started? This is something that I think we have to ask from the standpoint of, I think in the past couple of years we have been saying, doctor, I'd like to get you over to see Mark Bowen, or I would like to get you to do a cadaver. And we do want to do that if the doctor wants to do it. But let's not forget to ask the surgeon, what is it going to take to get you started, or what do you need to get started? If the doctor says, well, I need to do a cadaver, we'll do a cadaver. And FH is making a commitment to you to try to do a cadaver within 30 days of the request, or shorter. If the doctor says, well, I want to go see somebody, fine, we can set that up. I'm telling you right now, what I've seen in the last 30 to 60 days is that on several calls that I've been on personally, and certainly in fact, Gary Korfeld, you may want to comment on this. If you just say, what is it going to take to get you started right now, sometimes they're going to say, I'll just do it right now. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. So don't delay the sales cycle with something that is not necessary. Sell everything together when you're selling the FH story. This is a 50-year-old company. We've had a lot of success in orthopedics. We are a full-line orthopedic company in Europe. And these 2 products that we have, the shoulder and the coalesce system, are the best systems that we could bring to the U.S. that would immediately impact our operations in the U.S. The COLS has over 10 years of user history with supporting literature. In France, we have the most significant market share in the country. The Aero Shoulder has over 10 years of user history with outstanding results and with outstanding market share. So sell the history of the company and tell them that we're here to stay in the U.S. So that's all I have for you. Any questions we need to take care of? Everybody should be unmuted now.
All right. Hey, I wanted to add one more thing. Other distributors, I don't know if they carry more than just your shoulder line, but what we've seen in Michigan is that some of the surgeons that do knee surgeries, they absolutely understand and accept the keel for the shoulder because the tibial base plate that they put in the knee has a keel on it. So they know how strong that is already versus, I mean, if you were to ever ask a knee surgeon if he would just use a base plate with a central peg for a knee, he'd say absolutely not. So the keel idea of your shoulder base plate is an absolute, that's kind of a slam dunk for guys that do knees as well as shoulders. So use that to your advantage whenever you can.
Phil, that's a great idea. I'm sorry, you know, that's news for me to take advantage of. That's great news. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You know, I think there's one other thing. This is Gary, Michigan. One other thing to look at is, you know, which I found this week, just some guys will do a hemi, and it gets it started. And I've got a guy that doesn't do reverse that's going to start doing some hemis with us. He does one or two a month or whatever, a couple months, but it's a start. And some of these guys will throw you a hemi business. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with getting a couple hemis.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions out there?
Just a reminder, if you're actually not speaking, can you please mute your machine?
Sounds like somebody's flushing a toilet.
That's traffic noise, I bet. Okay. If you have any questions, you can either type them in if you don't want to talk, or ask them now. It's now about 10 minutes to the hour. That was a 50-minute review. I'd like to ask you to just shoot me a little email, or Janet, do we have a evaluation?
We will be sending out an email, yeah.
Okay. Please give us some feedback on what you thought of this. We're going to do it again tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. You're more than welcome to participate again. It's going to be the same story. You don't have to participate, of course. But give us an evaluation so that we can make these better. We're going to try to do this probably every other month, much to Janet's chagrin, because I come up with the idea, then she has to do the work. But that's okay.
I love that.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
Greg and Lucy, this is Jim in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Is this available taped for review later?
Did we tape this?
We are taping it. It is the first time, so I'd like to review it before I say yes, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we will be able to provide you, Jim, with the slide presentation. That's easy. I can send that to you myself.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hey, I've got one more thing to add. Sorry,
yeah,
I couldn't unmute my phone.
All right.
I've been really lucky to have Rick Caro here in Michigan with us. He takes time. I think both of you guys, you and Greg and Rick and everybody, but guys, take advantage of that, because Rick and I met. I went into a meeting with a doctor and I felt pretty confident about stuff, but the doctor was just asking questions way over my head, and he kind of beat me up a little bit. And luckily, I was able to say, you know what, I don't know those answers, but I want to get back with you, and I don't want to give you, just pull something out of my butt to tell you. I want these to be right answers. Then I met with Rick. We went to a hotel and just rented one of their conference rooms for about an hour and a half. And not only do we get to go through the instrument set, you know, if we need to do that, but we just get to brainstorm and problem solve, and I get to ask the questions that the doctor was asking, and not just get the answer, but understand why the aero system is made the way it is, and how to take all these different pieces of the puzzle and put them together so that when the doctor is asking you and you're right in front of him, you can understand the question, anticipate it, and work in that. So take advantage of Rick and Greg in those capacities, and anyone else within the FH system, because that got me back into the door to this doctor, and this doctor now is looking to get more involved, not just using the product, but you know, helping Americanize the system, and he's going to be giving some lectures out in California that FH is going to be sponsoring, and so it's a good tool to have so that you can build some credibility with your doctors that you already have somewhat of a relationship with, but take advantage of the knowledge that Rick and Greg both have to offer.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate that. And I would say that as far as shoulder knowledge goes, Rick Caro, been around it for a while. He knows it. If we don't hear from you, we probably feel like you're not making sales calls. If you call us, we know you're making sales calls, and we are going to support you. He who makes the most sales calls makes the most sales. That's all there is to it. So.
Hey, Rick, or Greg, speaking of that, I have one more question.
Yes.
The email that you guys sent out said the first guy called in on the call gets a $25 Starbucks. How are you going to work that out? Because there's probably 5 of us that should have tied for that.
Everybody gets one.
Hey, Janet, who was the first caller that we have, and how many called in at the same minute?
Well, I actually have to run a report after the meeting because there were people that all kind of came on at the same time. But what I would be interested in knowing, because there's only one sign-in name for each group, who was in your group at your location when you signed in?
Well, the crazy thing is I signed in at my wife loves Starbucks, so she wanted me to really get on top of this. So I signed in at like 25 till 11, and I was on for like 10 minutes, and then the call kicked me off. And when I signed back in, there was a gentleman from Chicago that was also on the second time. And then, but that was the wrong number, because then you sent us an email to go to this new number.
Yes. Is this Phil?
Oh, yeah.
Good to know. All right. Well, I will get back to you. Let me run the report just to be formal, and we'll have Greg make that final decision. How about that?
Trust me, everybody, the giving out of a $25 gift certificate from Starbucks is not an important issue for me to only give out one. I would rather give out 6 or 7 and have participants on this and get everybody excited about drinking a lot of coffee. Plus, if you have more quick caffeine, you might have more energy and make another sales call today.
Well, I have a gorgeous wife, so obviously I want to keep her happy.
Yeah, I understand that.
All
right. Well, I believe we are complete. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, and that's it. I appreciate your participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Dallas, Texas.